everyone, and welcome to my podcast, Hellman Talks. Today, I'm a bit jet-lagged because last night we arrived to New York City, but I'm very happy because I'm speaking to a very special guest. He's a Wall Street expert. He was a managing director in Goldman Sachs for more than 30 years, and he's now an entrepreneur, and he's opened his new school of coffee. And he was also one of the best mentors I had in university. The person that I'm speaking to today is Jim Conti, or Mr. Conti, how I used to call him. Yes. Welcome, Jim. How are you?
Yes, welcome to our school here in Hoboken, New Jersey, Claudia. It's awesome to have you here. And I will say I was very humbled when you asked me to do this podcast. And I'm very thankful to have you in my life and as a mentee and a good friend.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you so much for having us here in your school of coffee, which we'll talk more about later on. But to give a little bit of context for people, you and I met when I was studying in university here in the US.
Yes.
When I was doing the Goldman Sachs program. And I remember that back in the day, then you were like full on Wall Street, working in the finance world. You were like living in the corporate life in New York City. And now, a couple of years later, you're an entrepreneur and you build a school of coffee. So I'm very excited to hear a little bit about your Goldman Sachs days and a little bit what you're doing now in this coffee world. So as my dad would say, let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
Can you tell us very briefly where you come from and how did you end up in the Big Apple?
So my family is originally from Manhattan, the Lower East Side of New York City. And I grew up in New York City, went to school, public school, high school, and then on to college, all within the tri-state area of New York City. And while I was going to school, I went to work down on Wall Street. And this all happened many moons ago. I've really lived and worked in the tri-state area my whole life.
I feel like you're a very New Yorker in a way because you have the Yankees also a sweater for those who don't see in the video. I suppose that's your favorite team.
Yes, the Yankees are a lifelong passion and sometimes not so much of a passion of mine.
Yeah, well, I know that you have a lot of passions, like coffee is one of them, which we'll talk more about later. But if we start with your Goldman Sachs days, so you started as an analyst and then you climbed up the ladder and you became a managing director. Can you tell us a little bit for the people that maybe are not so familiar with finance, what your role in Goldman Sachs was?
Yes. So when I first started at Goldman Sachs, my role was in operations. I was an operations analyst and I did a variety of tasks there. And for the first several years of my career there, it was mainly dealing with different trading groups and supporting them. And fortunately for me, I worked with a number of partners at Goldman Sachs. This is pre-public days, so partners were very much truly partners of the company. And, I always prided myself on a hard work ethic. And I guess I was fortunate one day when a partner took a liking to me and moved me into the front office on the revenue side for the business I was supporting. So I knew the business really well from the operational side, but now I was thrown into the sales side and I was getting to meet clients, and my hard work ethic really paid off because it's not an easy road. The road isn't littered with gold coins and you're just going to walk along and pick them up. You've got to earn them. And through the 90s, that's really what I was doing. I was cultivating new businesses for a business that was relatively new at the firm. And we grew together.
That's very nice when you're like, as you say, when you're growing together, because then it makes me feel a little bit like your baby in a way. And as you mentioned, like having work ethic helps a lot as well, which is very good. And because you had been 30 years at Goldman, more or less, I'm sure that you have lots of stories and lots of memories. Do you have like a particular moment or story that you really cherish, or that one that maybe describes a little bit what your time in Goldman was like?
At Goldman Sachs, I would say just about every day, I don't want to say is the same, but the culture of Goldman Sachs, for whatever people may think on the outside of what culture is at Goldman Sachs, it's realistic. It's rooted in camaraderie, teamwork, collaboration. I use that word quite often, even nowadays, that the firm expects all of the staff members to collaborate with one another and come up with the best response to the business environment, to the client environment, so that our clients were serviced properly. So I don't have any one particular moment. I do remember things like the financial crisis.
How was that?
And it was very stressful, and we were in waters that none of us had ever been in before. And the firm was being asked by agencies in the government to do things differently, to account for things differently. And it was amazing to see how the employee base rallied around the product. We rallied around one another. Our clients really were serviced as well as could be in a very challenging environment. And that's when I think all of that culture stuff, for lack of a better word, comes into play. And now we all understood what it's like to be in the throes of imminent disaster, and yet we somehow came out of it, and we came out better than we went into it.
It must have been so interesting to be working in Wall Street during the financial crisis. That's something like I watch a lot of like documentaries or read books about that, because I think I know that it was for a bad cause, but it must have been very interesting also to see how a firm like Goldman was acting there, and then how they did after. But I also like what you mentioned, that the culture at Goldman, there you could really see how collaborative it is. You stayed there for many, many years. As I mentioned, you were there for like 30 years. What are the key characteristics that are needed to thrive there?
That's a good question, right? And we spend a lot of time when we're cultivating new employees looking for intangibles, because most of the people who come to the firm looking for a job on a resume, they all look stellar. They're all rock stars. But the intangibles are things like the ability to deal well under pressure, the ability to collaborate, which is not that easy for a lot of people, to be asked to go into a room with 6 other people just like you, very opinionated, strong-willed. You think you have the right answer, and then you're asked to go in a room with people like you and come out with one answer on a particular issue or a client involvement. And the beauty of it is, if everybody sticks to their personality and debates the issue as well as they can, and then yields to something that they understand to be better than their own position coming in, you will leave the room with the right answer. And I think that's what you look for in people that you're bringing into a corporation: collaboration, tolerance for other people's opinions, and the ability to humble yourself and say, there's a better idea than I came into the room with. There's an old adage that when you go in a room and you look around the table, and the smart person in the room knows they're not the smartest person in the room. So your ability to talk to everybody with that mindset and say, let's come up with the best answer. What traits do you think people need to do that? And I think it comes down to tolerance and motivation for the right reasons. Do the right thing and success follows, right? I don't know. I think the guy at Nike said that if I do the right things, success will follow.
Yeah, I think that you said many important things there. I do like what you said a little bit, like when you're looking at CVs, everybody looks very similar in a way. So it's about finding out how they're working under pressure, how collaborative they are, like the work ethic that they have. Because you were in Goldman Sachs for so many years, do you have like a particular lesson or something that you learned while you were there that kind of helped you throughout the rest of the years?
I think it comes down to the details. As they say, the devil is in the details of any particular issue. And understanding that work ethic, it's a nice thing to talk about, but what does it actually mean? And work ethic means there are going to be challenging moments where you have to get into the minutia of paperwork, of a transaction, and all the details matter to your customer, right? Because most transactions that we dealt with, 90% of them were similar to each other. But the 10% that were not similar, that's where your customers really counted on you to separate yourself from your competition. So I think details, and again, I will just harp on a value system where the results are really what you're after and how do you get them. And you'll do what you need to do work-wise. With your colleagues, all the while trying to obviously do a good job yourself, but never at the expense of your colleagues. Promoting your colleagues was always first and foremost. If they do well, I do well. Never wanted to promote myself at someone else's expense.
That's a little bit like to your point earlier about being collaborative, like
Yes.
working as a team, which I think is very good.
Right.
And which is something that reminds me a little bit of when we were doing the Goldman Sachs program. Like we were all working as a team, just like we wanted the team to shine. It wasn't just about having one person that shone or shine. I don't know how you say that in past.
Shone, yeah.
But actually something that I remember that you said back then, and it really stuck with me, that you always said, prepare, prepare, prepare. Where did that kind of come from?
Again, I'm big on sayings and cliches, but someone once told me that when someone would refer to me as lucky, that I've done well in transactions or in business, and you get called lucky a lot. And luck is an element of being prepared so that when opportunity presents itself, you're ready for it. And your chances of success are greater, but everyone only sees the result of it and they call you lucky. So I always said, well, I want to be called lucky. And how do I be called lucky? Over prepare. It doesn't always come to fruition, but I'm always prepared for a client, a business line, or any particular meeting.
Yeah, I really liked actually, because I remember in university when I was doing the program, you were always like prepare, prepare. But as you mentioned, it's about being over prepared, which maybe in a way people see it as that the results are being lucky. But I understand what you're saying, because it's a little bit like, I don't know if you remember, but I was playing a lot of tennis.
Yes.
And nobody sees all the work that's being behind. They maybe only see like the result, which is, oh, maybe I was lucky in this serve or something. And the reason why I made that serve, or the reason why I made whatever it is that you're working on, is because maybe I prepared a lot, like I put a lot of time to it. And it's something that I try to think a lot about also, because I think that also the more you prepare, the more confident you are. And then when you arrive to do, if it's a tennis match or a presentation or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's very true that most people only see the outcome. Certainly if it's positive, they pay attention to it. They do pay attention to it if it doesn't go as planned. But, the times where maybe you were playing or practicing tennis late at night and eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dinner at 9 o'clock at night, no one realizes that was going on all along. And that serve that you aced in a match maybe was a result of all those late night practices. No one sees that. They see the ace, though. And, I think it's really a good point that you're making. That might be a trait you have to look for in people as well, where they're comfortable understanding that no one's going to see the late night trials and tribulations that you go through. They're going to see only the ace that you hit. That's okay, right? As long as they see the ace. And maybe the smart people in the room will notice, wow, she just hit an ace. She must have been eating a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to do that ace, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's actually really good, because you can apply that to everything.
And everything, yes, that's right.
If we just kind of close up a little bit on your Wall Street chapter. So, because you were working in Wall Street for many years, so you've seen it from like the beginning to a little bit like how it is now. Do you think that it has, like, how do you think it has changed from like a culture perspective that you were saying earlier, or from like a mindset, or even from like a people perspective?
Well, I think it's no different than any other industry, right? Technology has played a tremendous role on its growth. And as other industries face the same challenges, technology absorbs a lot of the workflow. And what are people going to be doing? And it's analyzing data. I do think where Wall Street has changed a little bit is in the fact that technology is on every desk within a corporation now. So I do think for anyone listening to this or watching this who's thinking about a career path, I would say no matter what specialty you're going into, you need to understand the technology that supports that industry or that particular line of work that you're going into and master it, because that's where the delta is for people. The change into the successful career path. Understanding how technology can not necessarily make your life easier, but give you the information that allows you to do what you've been trained to do, which is to communicate a strategy, to communicate an idea, to build a business. Well, it's all supported with data. I think data gets a bad name from people because if you say data, everyone thinks of spreadsheets and pocket rulers and all of these kind of things. But data supports everything we do. So your ability to navigate through data, analyze data, and I think most importantly, prepare it yourself. So to manipulate the data with all the software on a basic level, Excel spreadsheets. Understand how Excel can help you turn thousands of cells of numbers into one cell that says, yes, proceed forward with this business.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell that you're a finance person because Excel, I know it's very big in the finance world. I really liked actually what you said about technology, because I think that's actually super important and it's something that everybody can apply to their world that they're working on. And I think that that's a little bit a way where you can differentiate yourself. So I think that some people are doing that very well, like doing AI courses and things like that. So it must have been interesting to see how, when you started in Wall Street, how that has developed to now, how we're so dependent to technology, and to, if you want to be better, you have to go up with the trends as well. So you were a couple of years in Wall Street, and then after decades, you decided to pursue what maybe it's your dream. I would love to hear more about that. But after a few years in Wall Street, you decided to open a school of coffee. What inspired this change?
My business partner and I are childhood friends. We know each other since we were 5 years old, and we've kind of kept in touch over the years. And we both were thinking about what's phase 2 of our lives going to look like. And we discussed coffee. And both of us have an interest in coffee. And we were trying to figure out, where do we fit into the coffee world? And we looked for a cafe, and we had some trouble finding it. But we also wanted to focus on what did we know about retailing coffee. So our natural inclination was, there's a school out there. So we looked for schools, and we didn't find too many schools. And the more and more we spoke to people, we felt there was a little bit of a niche market for education in the food and beverage business, but namely around coffee and almost all aspects of coffee.
I really like actually what you said about finding a niche, because I think that a lot of people end up succeeding a lot when they find this niche of this need that, for example, you find a good opportunity, let's go and explore this a little bit more. As you were maybe coming new to this industry, did you face any challenges? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Well, I think the number one challenge, and I think it's an ongoing challenge for us as individuals, we are finance people. And as finance people, our expertise in the coffee world can be challenged. So we felt very strongly that while we have a great finance background and we see a need in the marketplace, we both love coffee and we both understand business concepts, that from a professional standpoint, students would be better served by having coffee and business startup professionals serve them. Most importantly, because our programs are really predicated upon practical information sharing. So we don't get caught up in the academics so much, even though we do teach almost like a college business program. But we talk about from a practical standpoint, because our teachers live in the practical world, selling coffee, preparing coffee, establishing brands, marketing businesses, franchising restaurants. So they can talk to our students not so much about theory. They can literally say, on Tuesday I did this, and it means something to the student.
That actually reminds me a little bit of when I was in university here, not too far from where you're now. I really liked the teachers that they had real work experience because they were teaching you things that were much more practical than just from an academic standpoint. And I think it's very good that you're trying to apply that into your School of Coffee.
Yeah, and I also think it separates us from any other educational facility because you live in the real world. Our students live in the real world. We want to talk about reality. We do cover academic stuff. We do talk about theory, but you can get theory in a lot of places, and you can go on the internet and get theory from God knows who. But what you cannot get anywhere is our instructors and what they do for a living and their ability to communicate it, which I think they do it extremely well.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they do it very well. I know that what you said that what you want is people to continue being lucky. Do you have any particular vision with the school that you have?
Well, we're constantly changing. We're adding classes all the time. You know, we've thought about on a bigger scale. I would say we want to be more instrumental to that community of people who sees opening a business as a viable way to true success in their life, however they want to define it. And it gets back to the 1700s, why coffee shops existed. People went there to talk and share ideas. And imagine being that entrepreneur that sees their community in that light and somehow gets them there to where everybody can come together. I don't think there's any better way to go to sleep at night. Imagine that success feeling that person must have. So there's economic success, and then there's that intrinsic success that we all look for. Going home, looking in the mirror and saying, I'm pretty happy with Tuesday. I did a good job today.
Yeah. And you mentioned is starting your own business. So some people, they decide to start their own business when they have had a very successful corporate career. And then other people decide to maybe when they're 30, they're like, okay, I'm going to pursue my passions. Do you think that if there is a right timing to pursue that?
No, I think it's very subjective. I think it's probably up to the individual. But again, we'll go back to the things we were talking about a moment ago about the corporate side of my life. Working for yourself is wonderful in a lot of respects. It's very hard too. You don't get any time off. If you're taking vacation time, you've given yourself the vacation. But you're always looking at your business from a scalability standpoint. You're hiring new people. So there's always something going on in your life, and you've got to come in with a work ethic and a motivation, probably a lot different than when you work for somebody else. And at what point in your life that kicks in, I don't know. I think as you're more mature in life, in the business life, maybe you're at a better advantage for some things. But when you're new to the business world, your energy level is as good as it's ever going to be. And you do need a lot of energy to kind of tackle the issues.
Do you have any particular advice for someone who's maybe debating, like, do I jump or do I not jump? Do I leave the corporate world to pursue my dreams? Do you have a particular advice that maybe helped you?
The only advice I give, and we do get asked that from a number of people on the professional business side, and I always say to them, think about the reasons you're leaving a place and think about the reasons why you're running to a place. And they need to be very prospective where you're going, because if you're running away from a place, you're probably going to think about your new place shortly thereafter as the new place to run away from. Why are the challenges you're having in your current environment that you seem to think there's greener grass over the fence to go to? A lot of people I advise to try and succeed where you're currently at. Have you exhausted all of the different promotional opportunities that exist where you're an expert already? When you move into a new business, you're starting all over again. And the business community doesn't see you as the expert. You're the new person. So where you're at is probably not as bad as you think. But it could also be just time. You've been doing it a long time, and maybe you've always had something in the back of your mind to go into, and you want to give it a try, and you don't want to look back with any regrets as you kind of go through life. And so maybe it's that moment in time. So I do think it matters where you are in your cycle of life. However, ask hard questions of yourself when you exist somewhere and you're leaving it, because if you're leaving because of people, there's people everywhere. There's those kind of people too that you probably think that don't exist elsewhere. They're there. There's trials and tribulations on a corporate level. There's administrative work. It exists everywhere. So if you're looking to leave an opportunity that has all of that and go somewhere else, that exists somewhere else. So that's probably not a good reason to leave. But if you're leaving because it's just that moment, you've always dreamed about doing something out on your own, then educate yourself before you take the leap. Take the opportunity when you're prepared to take it.
Yeah, and I feel like you've taken a lot of opportunities, and a little bit like from the outside. I mean, you've had a very successful career. Like you were a first-generation college graduate. You climbed up the ladder in Wall Street, and now you have your own business. Do you feel like you live or have lived the American dream?
I mean, to some extent, the opportunities I've been afforded, I think, probably qualify for some of that. But I think the American dream is just about working hard, coming here with the expectation. There's that saying, no free lunch. There is no free lunch. You have to work and earn everything. Certainly in the business world, money seeks to go where money can compound, right? And money won't go where it can't compound. Well, compounding is derived from working hard and growing your business. It attracts new money because money says, oh, I can grow, and it keeps growing. So, but it's always rooted in that hard work, right? Because businesses all can replicate one another. When you come out with a new product, you have to be concerned, can somebody who's making something similar basically copy what you're doing? And what differentiates you from the marketplace, number one, and number two, are you ready to invest blood, sweat, and tears into the business? Because if you have a good idea, you've taken the education to take calculated risks properly, and you're willing to work hard, ready, willing, and able, right? You know those three things? You ask yourself, am I ready? Am I willing? Am I able to do this? Then it becomes divine intervention in your life. And that's a good opportunity to take.
Yeah, you mentioned hard work a couple of times. And I know that you're a person that has a lot of drive. Does this come from like your family, or where does this come from?
Honestly, I believe being around the employee base at Goldman Sachs, I've never been in a place that had the intellectual capital and the motivation en masse in an employee base like that. And everybody is supportive of one another. We're all trying to do what we believe is the right thing to do and work hard. You've heard about type A personalities. That's probably the home for the type A personality.
Is type A alpha or no?
Yeah. It's very aggressive.
Okay.
But I think the spirit of, they call it collegiality, where I guess in college people are thought of to work together. Exists like no other place there. And as a teammate, when you're on a team, you want to do well for your teammates. And that's work ethic, right? Because when I came into the office on a given day, my team was counting on me to do my job as good as I could do it. And I was counting on them to do the same. So when you have that kind of relationship with your teammates, I don't think there's anything better than I've ever experienced.
I think it's so good that you had that opportunity. And I remember also from when I was doing the Goldman Sachs program, I was so motivated by the people that I had around me that I wanted to be better myself, but then also as a team. So it's very important to a little bit like who you surround yourself with. Also like what they say about tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. It reminds me a bit of that.
That's very true. I think you learn a lot about people when you see the company they keep.
Yeah. So I know that you're very busy like you have a couple of projects going on here with the coffee school. Are you working on any other exciting projects?
There's a couple of things on the coffee side that we're in the beginning stages of, where we're so happy that some of the nonprofit businesses out there, there's these nonprofit businesses, and here's what they do. There are people who have these learning challenges and disabilities, for unfortunate word to use there, but people with autism, Down syndrome, and other developmental and learning issues that go into these programs where they can join the workforce on a customer service basis, but they need training, they need education because they can do it. And they're using the coffee cafe bar or the coffee shop as training ground to deal with people and serve coffee, learn about coffee, but it's a year-long program that they participate in. And when they graduate from the program, the great part is, I guess they can stay in coffee as well, but they can go work at another company that has client interactions. So they can go work at a Home Depot, go work in a movie theater, go work in some capacity where they're meeting clients, because the training in the coffee bar is like no other, honestly, because it's instant interaction, client satisfaction is minute by minute. And I guess that type of training really gives them the foundation to go out into the working world. And think about it, these are tremendous people now to have in the workforce. And if you've ever been in a coffee shop that has these folks in there, I will tell you, I go out of my way. I've driven 25 miles for a cup of coffee from a coffee shop in Connecticut that the staff there, I walk in, I never feel as good as I do them when I'm in that coffee shop.
That's nice.
These folks cannot serve you enough hospitality than that they can. So where does we come into that? Well, we can help train people. We can come up with protocols for these organizations. One particular organization reached out to us, so we're starting to go down that road. And that's just a personal thing of mine. I mean, that is rooted in everything I believe in, helping a community that needs support in a place that we think we can support them and we can put them in a better position for success to find them.
Nice. I think that's a very beautiful project. It must be very fulfilling also to work in something like that. And I mean, in reality, as everything that you've done, like you had a very successful, you started doing very well in university, which we shared the same university.
Right.
Then you were very successful in Wall Street working at Goldman. And now I'm sure it's going to go great for this exciting project. And it's been, very exciting to hear a little bit your story and what you're doing and how you got to where we are now today. Before we finalize, we have what we call the rapid questions, which I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, and then you answer the
quick
first
answers.
Thing. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So first question is, what's something that made you smile this week?
Something that made me smile this week is my sister's puppy last night.
Nice. I feel like dogs seem to be a theme because the prince that I interviewed the other day, he also said something about dogs.
Yeah.
We maybe need
Louis
a dog
is
here.
his name.
Okay, nice name. I know that earlier you were mentioning Spanish. What's a new language that you would like to learn?
French.
French. Okay, nice. Do you have a particular skill that you would like to learn?
Woodworking.
Okay, nice. And the last question, what's the best advice somebody has ever given to you?
Show up every day and do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah, I think that's good. Before we wrap up, is there something that you want to share that we haven't covered yet that you would like to mention?
No, I just, if I haven't emphasized it enough, I want to thank you so much. It is truly humbling for me to do these kind of things that, you're interested in some things that I have to say. And I would just re-emphasize, if I haven't said it enough, about, life and business is about relationships. It's about people. And people who go into different business lines. So it's less about the business line. It's always about the people. So surround yourself with great people, and great things eventually happen.
Yeah.
Maybe not so quick, but they will happen.
Yeah. Good things happen to good people.
That's right.
I really like that. I think that people is key in both business and personal. So I think it's very good. But Jim, thank you. Or Mr. Conti. How I used to call you.
Jim is fine.
I really appreciate your time today. It's been super interesting hearing a little bit more about you, like your journey, and catch up since we last saw each other in the US a couple of years ago. So thank you so much for coming to the podcast and for hosting us here and for making us some delicious coffee.
Yes, and if I could say one more thing that you just reminded me of, it is also very heartening and tremendous for me to see someone I saw as a student in college to grow into the roles that you're growing in on the business side and the podcast side, and to see how well our St. Peter's University college career has played out and will continue to play out. So kudos to you and all the work that you're doing, and clearly you, there's some other folks in the room here, are surrounding yourself with great people and great things are happening. So thank you for representing us all very well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to you and to St. Peter's and to, it was great speaking to you. So thank you.
Thank you.